All right, everyone. Welcome to our General Assembly meeting. Happy April Fool's Day. Hope you guys all had a wonderful day and a wonderful recoup day earlier this week. As president of RSA, I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Madam Vice President, can you please call the roll to establish quorum?
Yes, I will now call the roll. So when I call the name of your cab, your lead representative should say here, followed by the number of members present for your cab tonight. And then please state the answer to our attendance question on the screen, which is, if your cab was a bread, what kind of bread would it be? So starting with George Reed and Ray Street. Independence. James Smith and Thomas McKean. North Central.
Here. And there's three of us.
Awesome.
And the bread we would be is probably sourdough.
All right, awesome. South Central.
Present. There's also one other member with us, and we would be garlic bread.
Yes, garlic bread for the win. South Academy.
Here, one member and probably wheat bread.
Cool. Reading and Gilbert.
Here, one member present, and we're going to be pumpernickel.
Wow, okay. Win-win. Harrington. Russell.
Here, three members present and cheesy bread.
Cool. I love all of these bread options, but I also just like bread in general. So, all right, Lane Thompson Smythe.
I'm here, one member, and Cheesecake Factory bread because it's really good.
Yes, awesome. Any CDC officers with us on the call?
Here.
Hi.
And we would probably be banana bread.
Yes, another winner. Okay, executive board, what bread are we?
We're just white bread.
Does cornbread count?
Yes, it does. It does. Wait, no, it might technically be a muffin, actually.
I'm not entirely sure,
Muffin?
but I love all the suggestions. Big fan of pumpernickel bread too, whoever said that. And banana bread.
Actually, all breads. So, all right, so we have 6 cabs with representatives present today, and quorum has been established.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and welcome to all of our GA members and guests. I'm now going to throw it over to our Director of Finance and our Director of Advocacy to update us on our advocacy and programming grant budgets. Doesn't look like TJ is here, so I'm going to update us. There's $1,900 in our programming grant budget. And it doesn't look like size here either. There is $1,000 in our advocacy grant budget. So as you guys are familiar with, our grants are open and accessible for all cabs, all students on our campuses to use. And they're available on our website if there are any programming and advocacy projects you're looking to accomplish in your residence hall. With that, I am going to start us off tonight with some Zoom etiquette. Same as always, we'd love to see your smiling faces. So if you'd like to and you're able to turn your camera on, please do. If you have any questions or comments at any point in time, throw an X in the chat and we will be happy to get to you. That said, we're going to start off with some announcements. Starting with Roxana, who's going to tell us what's going on.
Hello, everyone. So some upcoming events will be recognition in a virtual world, which is right now. So you can go to Instagram and recognize people there. And then second, we have Air Fives and Beehives, which will be on Friday, April 2nd from 12 to 2 p.m. at Perkins Evening Room where it's going to be a grab and go station. And so please come. We'd like to see your beautiful faces there. And lastly, RSA Bingo Night 2.0 will be on Friday, April 9th from 6 to 7:30. And you can register at the bit.ly shown on the screen. So it's bit.ly/RSA Bingophobia. And the Zoom code is there. And we have a graphic to your right. So it's beautiful, it's fantastic, and hopefully you will come to the RSA Bingo Night. I'm excited to see everyone there, so register. And lastly, of course, end of the year banquet will be on Saturday, May 15th from 6 to 8. So please keep that in mind since it's our end of the year celebration. Okay, next I'll pass it to Abby. All right.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Abigna. I'm the Vice President of the Resident Student Association. And I will be kind of breaking down election season because that is officially starting today. So election time is a really exciting time. All of the information I'm about to present is super important, so please listen carefully. So we can switch to the next slide, actually. So every year, for context, as we approach the middle of spring, RSA officially enters into our annual election season to establish the RSA Executive Board for the next year, right? So our election cycle is taking place starting today officially, so very exciting, and we'll be in this process up until the middle of May. On the right, you will see the full timeline for elections as they are taking place this year. This was also included in the email that was sent out earlier today. So feel free to just read along the list as I just go through some of the important details about how elections is going to work this year. So like I said, today is the official start of election season. The nomination and candidacy forms are open for submission as of tonight. I will explain those more in depth in a couple of minutes, but essentially the nomination form is for nominating potential candidates to run for a position on the RSA Executive Board, and that deadline is April 9th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard. The candidacy form is if you specifically intend to run for a position on the board, and those will close by the 11th at 11:59 p.m. also Eastern Standard. So those are the two main important forms that you should keep in mind. If somebody wants to put that in the chat, go for it. As you see down the list, April 12th is when candidates will be permitted to begin campaigning. So those who submitted an intent to run by the 11th through the candidacy form that means that you are pretty much bound to run for office because that is what submitting the candidacy application form means. But out of fairness to all candidates, official campaigning, whatever that looks like for you, can't begin until 8 a.m. the following day after the candidacy form deadline. So campaigning typically comes in the form of posters, social media, however you're choosing to advertise yourself as a candidate, but you can't begin spreading those until the day after, just so that nobody gets an unfair leg up due to having filled out the form earlier. In the interest of time, we are going to just provide more information about the campaigning process specifically at next week's GA, but just keep that date in mind. All right, so the 15th and the 22nd are our two General Assembly meetings, middle of April, that will be dedicated to presenting the election speeches. Again, more format about these are going to be presented at next week's meeting, but essentially we're trying to secure an in-person space just to make it more professional and how they traditionally run. So each candidate will essentially have 8 minutes for their speech with a 5-minute period for question and answer and a 5-minute period for discussion. Historically, because elections tend to be a very involved parli-pro process, these meetings tend to run longer than our traditional meetings. So we also just want you all to keep in mind that we've allotted 90 minutes for the GA on the 15th and the GA on the 22nd. and more specific details to come for the order of events for those 2 meetings. Finally, voting is going to open on the 26th, which is the Monday after the last day of speeches, and the results will come out by the end of that week. So that is just a rundown of the timeline of how elections is going to look like throughout the month of April. Cool. Good so far? Awesome. So what is your job essentially as participants in the elections? Basically, there are a number of things that we'd like you all to be thinking about. First, think about our GA this year. Look around the Zoom room at your fellow student leaders. Who have you worked with or observed during maybe these meetings, your CAB meetings or CDC meetings, or even outside of this RSA GA space? Do you have a peer who's gotten involved on campus as a student advocate and who RSA would benefit from their leadership? I ask you these questions just because as of tonight, since our election forms are officially open and live, the nomination form is for you to give you a chance to recognize someone who would perform well in a particular role. And it also sows a seed in the mind of someone who may not have been considering running previously. So we're really trying to shoulder tap and get people to be interested in positions on the board for the following year. So the nomination form is linked on the screen. Ryan also sent it in the chat. These again close on April 9th. So ask any questions you have ahead of time and submit that form, please. It will benefit us greatly. The second thing that I encourage you all to be thinking about is your own intentions for staying involved with RSA next year. Are you interested in running for an executive board position? And if so, what position are you considering running for? Especially as CAB members this year, you may have developed a passion for certain types of roles. And so if you are interested and intend on running for office, you will be responsible for submitting that candidate information and intent form, which is essentially the candidate application, by the stated deadline of April 11th. So that form is linked on the screen as well as in the chat. If you want to read more about the positions on the executive board that are available, you can visit the election pages on our screen. So I'm sure somebody will send that in the chat as well. Regarding eligibility, all of us here are essentially eligible to run. So as long as you are a full-time student and have lived on campus for at least 1 semester, you are eligible to submit a candidacy form. There is a bit of varying eligibility if you are thinking about becoming an RA, and you can read about those specifics when you go to fill out the candidacy form. As a heads up for next week's General Assembly meeting on the 8th, we are planning a positional roundtable where you will get to hear about current e-board members' experiences as part of the board. So as you make these important decisions, we are planning to help guide you in the right direction as well, if you have any questions or are up in the air about what you want to do. All right, cool. We can switch to the next slide. Because that was a lot of information, we have made a 3-step breakdown for what you definitely need to do in order to qualify as a candidate for the upcoming elections. So first, decide what position you intend to run for. At the very least, read through the descriptions on our website and narrow it down to a few that you might be interested in, and hopefully next week's GA will help you solidify that decision. Then make sure to take the time to prepare candidate materials. So like I mentioned, an email was sent out earlier today with examples and resources that you may need to put together a biography, a statement of intent, your professional headshot, and your presentation. So just for context, the 3rd step is officially submitting the candidacy form to secure your intent to run. And the form itself isn't long, but it will ask you to submit your biography and your intent and your presentation for the speech you intend to give at the GA meetings in the middle of April. So you will need to make sure that those are prepared ahead of time, because it will ask you to submit just the file in order to complete the form. So those are steps 1, 2, 3, which hopefully consolidated all of the words I said to you over the past 10 minutes. And yeah, that's basically the rundown, and hopefully that was presented in a logical format. But I'm going to yield the floor to questions at this point, in case anything was confusing, so that we can help clear the air. Throw an X in the chat. I will say, if questions do come up over the next week or so, you can direct them to udelrsa@gmail.com, and you will receive a response within 24 hours or so, if you don't have any questions right now. But as you decide what to run for and if you would like to run, that is the place to direct your questions. Sound okay? Cool. I am like sweating. I yield the floor to whoever would like to speak next instead of me.
I'll take it, Abby. But thank you so much for that overview. Just to do, I love to recap other people's thoughts, so I'm going to do that. The e-board will agree there. But all of the current executive board officers were CAB officers at some point along our leadership journey, and we're going to talk a little bit more about our specific experiences at the GA meeting next week. But this, running for election for RSA, it's a big deal, but it's also a really important step that you can take in your leadership journey at UD, and gain a lot of experience and meet some really great people. So as Jordan said in the chat, if you know some of those great people that you've had the chance to work with, nominate them. And if you yourself are one of those people, you're passionate about this work and you're interested in getting a stronger footing in leadership positions on campus, then run yourself, and you absolutely will not regret it. It was one of the best decisions that I made as a freshman, sophomore, and junior running for e-board at my time at UD. So, alrighty. As Abby said, if you have any additional questions about elections, we will be there for you over the next couple weeks. So just let us know. No question is too basic and no question is too complex. Alrighty. As we advertised, tonight we have a very special guest with us. Michelle Kane serves as the Senior Associate Director for Assignments and Business Services in Residence-Housing. Most importantly, one of her key responsibilities is overseeing housing assignments and the housing application process. This is especially relevant right now because the housing application just went out. So tonight we invited Michelle to come and speak about the housing application and some things going on in Residence-Housing, and answer your questions, get student feedback, and give her a chance to update us on all things RLH. So with that, I can unshare my screen and give Michelle access to share your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That'd be fantastic. And I can get that started up when you're done. Let's see if I do this correctly. All right. Hopefully you see my screen, my little PowerPoint piece. I have great. Fantastic. Thank you so much for welcoming me here tonight. RSA is near and dear to my heart. I advised RSA from 2000, I'll say, 4 until about 2012, 13 or something like that. I've got my NACUR swag on, and that's why I also highly recommend anybody to apply for an executive board position, because you get more connected with people from other schools doing the same things. It's really spectacular and a really amazing opportunity. But aside from that, a little bit about me. Ryan introduced me with my title and everything. I've been at UD in some capacity in residence life and housing for over 22 years now. I was in the residence halls. I've been out of them for quite some time. So what my title means is that my primary responsibility is oversight of our assignments, like how we manage and put people into our spaces, people applying to get into those spaces. And I deal with a lot of the money stuff. You'd actually be surprised how involved I still am with all of your money that you all work with still. But to that end, I really do want to talk to you a little bit about next year in housing, because it's been very different for us actually for the last several cycles, we've had a significant number of changes on like a yearly basis. So a lot of people have been like, well, what do you think? And what do you expect? I'm like, I'm not too sure what to expect anymore because every year is a little bit different. But what I do know is that we're excited to bring students into campus next year in a more robust fashion that we were even able to do this past spring. So a couple of things that I'm hopeful to get through. And please know I'm originally from New York, so I apologize if I speed talk, but I do want to get through my presentation quickly so I could definitely answer questions if there are any. So we'll be talking about living on campus, a little bit about what we're doing with some of those safety precautions, in more particular, how to apply for housing and the important dates, and a little bit about what we've been talking about, what you've seen in your emails from us about being guaranteed housing versus priority for room selection. So we've always kind of had a philosophy that living on campus, you're living in a community of learners. You have so much to gain by the residence hall experience. And that's even like what you're doing here today as part of RSA. This is a learning experience. You know, maybe you don't think of it as a learning experience, but you should be learning things from your RSA experience. We provide access to campus resources in a slightly different fashion than what you would get if you were off campus. And a lot of it has to deal with that one-on-one support from residence hall coordinators like Jordan, who's your advisor, and the resident assistants that you see all the time on your floors. We have always, I've been, like I said, in this spiel for a couple of decades now, we have always maintained that the biggest benefit is to students who are in their first and second years to live on campus. When we see that they have a higher GPA than those living off campus, they're more involved and have greater satisfaction with their overall undergraduate experience. We see far fewer of those gains once people become juniors and seniors, but in particular, people who are first year students and sophomores seem to have the most to gain from that. I do want to talk a little bit about room styles. One of the things that I think people, are really familiar with are the traditional styles. You've got that single or shared bedroom. So right now everybody's in a single, and some of you might have 2 sets of furniture. Some of you might even have 3 sets of furniture in your buildings where you are. Then you're sharing a bathroom on a hallway. The custodian maintains that. You've got some other amenities there. So that is what we call traditional style residence hall. And we have those still available when you go into, if you're a first year student, that's part of the returning student menu is part of the traditional style halls. Then there's suite style. So suite style is primarily like your Independence, your Ray Street. So these are 2 bedrooms which then share a bathroom in between. And what's really important to know is that you're responsible for the cleaning of those bathrooms. Meal plans are still required in both our traditional and our suite style. And what most people are interested in is living in an apartment as they get into their second, third, and fourth year on campus. All of our apartments, for the most part, are located over in the University Courtyard apartment area complex, which is just over there on South Chapel Street. They are 2-bedroom and 4-bedroom. We have 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 4-bath, and 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Those apartments have their own kitchens, so meal plans are not required. They also have their own laundry that's included in that space. So that's a little bit about what we have in our inventory. Right now, the university does not have any plans to build anything additional. We are hopeful, but we've had a couple of different plans that have gone in different downward turns, so we haven't fulfilled anything yet. I know some people might have heard that we've done master leases with One Easton. We have done that for the past 2 years, but we are not doing that this coming year. It's not been a place where it certainly has provided space for us. It does not provide the community experience, though, that we expect our students to gain as they're in our residence also. We do have living learning communities for people to join into. Students who are an honor student can request to join the upper division honors. Please know that is not a required, none of these are required when it comes right down to it, but so none of them are required. So do know that, but they are all optional and they have to be applied to. Our gender inclusive, also known as all gender, are for students who don't necessarily identify on a gender binary and they identify on a gender spectrum, and that we have some different housing options for students who decide to join that community. Well, those are primarily placed in our suite style housing though. We do have an all women's residence area. We have the puppy raisers of UD, or PROUD. Please know that if you're not currently a puppy raiser, if you're not already connected to that, oops, let me go back one, that if you're not already connected to that community, you that might not be your community. So you might want to talk to them before applying for that community. And then our substance-free group. And again, those are people who are making a pledge in their life to be substance-free, whether that's alcohol or drugs, et cetera, that have a community that supports that. Well, I know a lot of people are wondering about safety when it comes to COVID precautions. Please know the only thing that I can say very specifically is that we are looking to still reduce density in our residence halls. So what that means for us is that we have buildings that are very flexible in the way that we see them and the way that we can place people in them. So why some people might say, well, that room seems like it's a double. We also look at it as a triple, depending upon what our needs are and how we can navigate that and make sure that we're still to code. There are city codes and state codes that we have to be mindful of. We are always mindful of those things, but we won't go beyond what we think is the right maximum of 2. And some places we actually do have rooms that are 3, and that is fine too. But we won't be going to where we have a lot of people in triples. It'll be more of our lower number of what we our threshold that's appropriate for our spaces. So that's one of the COVID precautions that we're putting in place next year. I could not tell you about, will we be wearing masks in the fall? Will we allow outside visitors in the fall? We just don't know those pieces at this time, but we'll continue to follow the guidance of our local and state and federal health officials. So what I really want to spend some time on is the actual application. So the application is open now. Students can go to their My Housing portal button that's located on our website. And please know that when you do that, there's no charge at all. So it's something that's super important for me to always express to people. There is no charge to apply for housing. So please don't be like, well, I don't want to apply because I'm going to owe something. Not for a bit. So you've got a little bit of time. I always want to tell people, err on the side of applying and make sure you cancel on time if you need to cancel, but get that application in, otherwise you can't even be considered. Please know that when you apply, you are applying just for a spot on campus, not for a particular building or a particular room type. We don't guarantee roommates. What a lot of people ask me is, how do I get an apartment? And what I can tell you is that you're not applying to get just an apartment. You're applying to get a spot on campus. Whether or not you get an apartment is dependent upon whether or not an apartment is available at the time that you select a space. What I can tell you is that about 30% of our inventory available to returning students is apartment style. So you probably have about a 30% chance of getting an apartment. And while I hate to recommend people to go off campus, especially if they're going into their second year or even their junior or senior year, I'd love to see people stay on campus. And especially for those of you who want to stay involved in RSA, the difficulty becomes that if having an apartment is that important to you, you should potentially move off campus because that's the inventory that's in our area. You'll be guaranteed that. If not having an apartment is a make or break deal for you, on-campus housing might not be the right course of action. But in that timeline, as you all saw, the application opened up last week, Tuesday, the 23rd. And you have until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 13th of April to apply for housing. Again, it's not first come, first serve. There's no fee for it. You can also apply for those optional living learning communities that I mentioned as well. So all of that happens right now. On April 20th, so after April 3rd and 13th, we'll start looking at all the information that we have and we'll ship off to the program coordinators for those learning communities who applied for them. On April 20th, we'll send an email letting people know whether or not you are guaranteed or if you're on a wait list. That is completely dependent upon how many people apply. And a lot of people are like, well, how many people have applied in the past? And I can tell you, we have received well over 4,000 applications in the past some years, but it wasn't like what we have now. So for example, I actually know right now a lot of current first year students who already signed off-campus leases. A lot of people who were here in the fall. So we had about just over 1,300 students here in the fall. A lot of them not knowing what we were planning on doing, just decided to start taking those actions back then. Having said that, I will tell you again, that if you're like, there's nothing available in the Newark market. I can tell you there's plenty available in the Newark market. I have a lot of property managers coming to me right now asking, hey, we used to do a housing fair and even had these outside partners come because they have a lot of spaces available. Again, we hope that on April 20th, we're able to house a lot of people and guarantee them, but that's when we'll know. But if you don't know, we are planning if you don't get that guarantee, we are planning on doing some type of, I'll call it a housing fair or just some kind of housing presentation so you can see opportunities available in the area. At that point on the 20th, if you're guaranteed and there's a roommate that you have who was also guaranteed, that's your time to start making a roommate group or to look for a different roommate. You don't have to have a roommate though to go into the room selection process. So we know that a lot of people haven't been able to make connections, even if they were here last year. I'm sure a handful of you were, freshmen last year, you're a sophomore this year, and you only had one semester really to connect with people. So we know that not everybody has that set roommate. So do know you don't have to have a roommate in order to go into the selection timeframe. Most of the people who were guaranteed housing, they'll be able to go in and select that room. So if you've ever flown on a plane and had the option to select an airline seat, it's kind of like that. And similarly, maybe you had your heart set on a aisle seat and there's no aisle seats left. That's kind of the same thing when I've said, maybe you had your heart set on an apartment and by the time that you go in to select, you've missed out. So whereas getting priority to be guaranteed, we've placed emphasis on those students who are current first-year students getting prioritized first to get guaranteed. And then come our current sophomores. And when I say when I utilize those class terms, I mean by when you were admitted to UD. So current freshmen are people who were admitted in fall of 2020 and spring of 21. Current sophomores are people who were admitted in fall of 2019 or spring of 20. So even though, and I know this, a lot of students, because they've had some great opportunities before they've even come to the university to gain college credit, or maybe during, winter session, they got boosted up almost like a whole semester, but credits don't count into that priority piece for getting guaranteed. But where they do count is in the selection. So if we are able to house seniors and juniors, et cetera, those seniors will go first. It goes by class year, and then it goes by credits. So even thinking about the number of sophomores that will get guaranteed, those sophomores who maybe have junior credit standing, they'll get to select before our sophomore who has a lower credit number. What's really different this year, though, is about our cancellation policy. We've been trying to provide a great deal of flexibility for people who need to cancel. In particular, this past 2 semesters, it was about we got it. Not as many classes were in person as people maybe thought were going to be. And we even had a number of people whose in-person class got changed to online way after they registered for classes, and even way after they had said, okay, I want to live on campus. So we did try to do our best to provide a lot of flexibility. So going into this process, knowing that registration doesn't actually start until May, we knew that the course schedule is supposed to come out, I want to say in 1 more week. So you'll be able to see, okay, if Chem 320 is going to be in person or not in person. And I know the president made the announcement about, classes being back into, our in-person mode, but there are still some classes that won't be. And that some of it's by major, some of it is by the class size, because we won't be doing, 100+ person classes. So some of those things are still in I don't want to say a TBA mode, those are things that we know that we're not going to do. And will be available in the course registration information that's going to be coming out very soon. So in the trying to be as flexible as possible, knowing that people wouldn't register until May, and that you should have your class schedule. And I know people get their classes changed all the time, but really registration is fully in May. We wanted people to have some flexibility to continue getting out of the contract if their course schedule was going to go all sorts of awry. So that's where, come April 20th, if you're guaranteed, you're going to start paying a $200 cancellation fee. That $200 cancellation fee for people who are guaranteed goes through June 14th at 11:59 p.m. As of June 15th at midnight, that's when there are additional fees. If you're not guaranteed by April 20th and continue to not be guaranteed, you can continue canceling your contract without any fee, not even the $200 cancellation fee. So it's something that we're really trying to be as flexible as possible as people are learning about their course schedules, as well as learning about whether or not they got the type of housing that they desired or the roommate they desired. So usually, just to give you folks a contrast, if you've not been through this, because if you're a current sophomore, you didn't get, like, we didn't really have the true housing selection process that we usually do. Usually you're bound to a contract at the end of March when you haven't registered and maybe you're still changing some things in your life. So we worked really hard and this is a huge financial change for us too, to be completely honest. And we're good with that. I don't want to say we'd rather lose the money than lose the person. You know, we want to keep people as students. That's what's most important, not to just keep them in our housing. So we provide a lot of consideration there. So if you're studying abroad and all signs are pointing to most study abroad programs going forward in the fall, and if you're planning, like, let's say that you're studying abroad in the fall and you need housing for the spring, you should apply for housing now. Let's say that you're studying abroad next spring and you're planning on living on campus in the fall. You should apply for housing now. The only exception is that if you're a World Scholar. We have asked World Scholars very specifically not to apply because they are traveling in the fall. And then they are automatically guaranteed for next spring. We didn't want to have them apply right now and not get guaranteed when we know we're going to guarantee them. So we kept them out. So if you're not participating in World Scholars, but you're participating in Worlds in a study abroad, get in that thing, get into that application. If you have an accommodation need, and some folks don't really realize like some of the things that are accommodations, like for example, I have a son who has asthma. At the point that he goes off to college, he's going to have to live in a building that has air conditioning. I'm going to have to make sure our medical professionals provide that information to the university so that we make sure he gets it. So something like air conditioning is an accommodation. Even though we have a lot of inventory that has air conditioning, not all of them do. Same thing, like, you know, we don't have elevators in all of our buildings. So a similar thing. And maybe it's not even so much that you're in a wheelchair kind of thing, but what if you have a really bad knee from a horrible, you know, sports injury or something like that, and you can't do stairs? Like, we need to make sure we know that you're on the first floor. So these are all things that need to be submitted. Those all get sent over to our Disability Support Services group. They are fantastic. They will let us know what has to happen. Just make sure it gets in by the 13th. So again, just another word about priorities that makes sense. Housing priority is priority for receiving a space on campus, so becoming guaranteed. Again, in the past, we used to say anybody who applies during this time frame, you're definitely guaranteed. We are just concerned that we don't have enough space to make that guarantee at this point. So what we are asking is that, you know, give us a little bit of time to get through to see how many people have applied, and hopefully we can guarantee already. We just don't know. And then room selection priority is about once you're guaranteed, when you get priority to select a space. So where housing priority is given more to our current freshmen, our rising sophomores, priority for selection goes by seniority, with our most senior students going first. I kind of just said that. Please know that if you apply for a living learning community and you're accepted into that living learning community, that's the only place that you're guaranteed a spot. If you're like, oh, I didn't really want to live there, and after you've been guaranteed there, you get put to the end of the wait list because we've guaranteed all of our other spaces at that point. So please know that if you're going to apply for a living learning community, and you can only apply for one. So please do know that you can't be like, well, let me see if I get into this one. If not, I'll get into that one. You're only allowed to apply for one. So please do know that, but you need to, if you get selected and get guaranteed a spot through that process, you have to stay in that space. we will stay in touch. You might have received a reminder email today. We had our server that sends out our emails was having technical difficulties today, so we're not sure if all of our notes went out or not. But we sent out an email last Tuesday. We sent out an email today. We encourage you to designate a parent or a guardian as an authorized user on UDSIS. So if you have ever allowed a parent or guardian to have access to like your bills, there's a spot that says housing. So please put them on that, because what we have found out is that a lot of times a parent or a guardian is like, I had no idea that this was even going on, that housing, that you could even apply. So we send additional information. Like we would never tell them, like we don't share room assignments with them or anything like that. But this way they have information like that you might be going into this, and or that at the point that you've signed a contract, that they're aware that you have signed a contract. So we do encourage you to do that, because we did send a note out to parent and guardians who are on that list last week. And then there's the Blue Hen Family Hub. I do encourage both students and parents to connect with that, because there are some interesting things that go out, things that you should all be getting emails about, but sometimes slightly differently put, as well as, like I said, it goes out to families as well. I also encourage you to look when you go into your My Housing portal. There's a spot for messages. So any email that we have ever sent you is also in there. So if you're like, I don't know, I heard something about housing, instead of searching your own inbox, you could always go into the My Housing portal and find just our messages to you in that space. As always, we are here to help. We aren't fully staffed necessarily in our office, but that's where our office is right now. Our phone number, though, is very much so, we have our call folks, always online and available from 8 to 5. We answer our emails usually within like a 48-hour business period, oftentimes a lot less than that. So please, please, please call us if you have any questions. I plan on being on campus. I'm still trying to find a location. Unlikely, at the end of next week. So that in a couple of different days, like near like either dining halls or testing centers. So that if people have any questions, they could just like kind of walk by and like be like, oh, hang on, I don't know this about housing. But if you all have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them.
Griffin?
So I always get this confused, and I don't know if this is kind of like a dumb question, but like, what's the difference between like the living and learning communities and like the other ones, just the regular communities? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Because I lived in one last year, and I just didn't know like what I had differently than everyone else,
So the biggest difference, well, I'd say there's a couple of pieces. So for example, in honors specifically, they have what are called senior fellows who are doing additional programming that's about the honors degree. In our all gender community, it really varies by year, but we have some designated team members in that space who, as students are trying to learn more about their identity or want to express more about their identity, that they have a space to do that. Same thing with our all women's community, our substance-free community. Our Proud group, again, it's a space because in part for their ability to raise their dogs. We allow people to raise dogs in more than just that location, but it's just something more specialized that we've worked out with them for their needs. So really what it comes down to is some slightly more specific programming to that area of interest. Great question though, not a dumb question at all. And again, differently than like for first year students, a lot of the living learning communities are required. In returning student housing, it is not.
Just so they can program more, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I was wondering, you said that UD has no plans to build anything more right now. So I know there was a lot of talk about a very large building in basically the green area behind Warner. It was like a 600 bed
That's correct.
So that's those plans have been completely scrapped.
That has been set on a bookshelf for the time being. So that actually happened pre-COVID in that, oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember the year, but I'll say in fall of 2018, there was a fire in McKinley Hall, which is a lab building. And at the time of that evaluation and what was going on with that space, it was kind of, we were trying to figure out which do we need more? Do we need a lab space more? Do we need a residence hall more? Because we can't afford to build both. So the residence hall piece of it is being bookshelved as we decide how to really meet a lot of different needs that the university has right now. Certainly COVID has put things off its rails. Financially, we were in a bad spot there for about 6 to 8 months, not knowing whether or not we would get any kind of funds back from our losses from the federal government or from the state government. And obviously, the president has announced we've decreased that gap quite a bit, but we're still trying to figure out some of those pieces. So right now, that has definitely been put on the shelf. So we're not going to quite dust that off just yet. No matter what, a building from the time that you break ground to the time that you can open is at least 18 months. And at this point, those plans probably aren't out of date, but they would have to go through a review of code before they could get moved forward. And if there's anything that's not up to code, to see, you hope that you don't have to do a complete redesign, but you have to figure out how that happens first. So still on hold.
Okay, thank you.
A good memory on that one.
Yeah, I remember Jim came to give a presentation at one of the GA meetings. We were all excited about that residence hall, and then things happened. But that's long in the past. Any additional questions from the GA about the housing application, about anything pertaining to residence psych? Jordan?
Yeah, Michelle, say I wanted a roommate. So we both applied and were guaranteed housing. Would we select together, or would one of us select and hope that the other person could get there? How would that work?
That's a great question, Jordan. So how it works is that provided that you went into the roommate manager and selected each other, we would average out your times for selection. And then one of you gets appointed what we call room captain. And that person can go in and do the selection. Now, if they can't, we can switch that. We just need to get that information from the team group to understand that. But one person can make the selection for both people. By becoming roommates, you're saying we allow each other to select the space for us. And that way you're able to get into the same room together is what our hope is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Abby, is that a hand raise?
Me, yes. So in the past, I have heard of there being availability of apartment style rooms in residence halls that traditionally have like just like the traditional housing or the suite styles. So would you mind touching more on what student like eligibility would look like for that in the upcoming year?
Yeah, so we have called those executive apartments in the past. So I'm glad that you have heard about them. And they are just like what you described them. So for example, one of the most popular ones is over in Squire. It's an apartment. You share a bedroom with someone else. So they're not singles, they are doubles. And you have a kitchen, you have a little living space and everything like that. They're smaller than the university courtyard apartments in a general sense. But and they are priced differently for that matter. We don't know if we're going to have those available for inventory or not, but there's not a specific application process to those. So in the past, we've set them aside as spaces where we saw like university leaders going into who would then be required to do some programming for a specific group. We are not able to coordinate that program this coming year. So we're going to see whether or not we're going to use that as general inventory, or if we need to, we have had actually, believe it or not, more requests for accommodation needs that are well suited in those apartments. So sometimes we've needed to use them for other needs altogether. So if they're available at the time that you select your room, you can select them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any additional questions for Michelle?
I've tossed my email address in there, so please feel free to email me directly if you don't want to email, or you're also welcome to share out our, I don't know if I have it up here. Hang on. Am I clicking the right spot? Yep. This is our regular email address for our department. And again, that one will get answered a little bit faster than once to me, but we welcome your questions. And I really do appreciate your time and what you're doing for our students in our residence halls. Again, RSA is near and dear to my heart. I really love all things RSA and the opportunities that it has available to all of you. And when you're fully back on campus and able to meet in person, just some spectacular things that you guys have done. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And as you said, emails are in the chat. This meeting's recorded. So on our YouTube channel, you guys, if you have questions or you want to see a recap of the housing process that was presented tonight, you can always refer back to that video that will be posted after the meeting tonight. So thank you again, Michelle, for coming, and thank you all for the great questions. All right. Moving on, looking forward, next week, our General Assembly meeting, just like every week, is on Thursday. In this instance, Thursday, April 8th, from 7 to 8. We're going to do a very exciting advocacy energizer for CAB students. You guys will have a chance to talk about some of the great work that you're doing in your halls, kind of similar to the workshop that we did earlier in the semester. And then we're also going to do a more in-depth overview of executive board elections and give you guys a chance to speed date a little bit with each of the officers and learn more about what we do in our executive board positions. So a lot of good things coming next week, in addition to some of the events that Roxana mentioned earlier, including bingo night on Friday. Continue to follow us and engage with us on social media. The Instagram has been especially active recently. Victoria is doing an amazing job. So if you have to pick from one of these to follow us on our Instagram page, and we're going to be very active as the semester continues. Griffin, do you want to give an update on the point system?
Sure, no problem. So as you can see here, we are keeping very active on tolls. There's multiple ways you get points, as I shared beforehand. I can send the link out here. Give me a second. I get after. But right now in the lead, we have LTS, which I believe they have 6 points. South Central, they have 5 points. Russell, they have 3 points. And South County has 2 points. Try to stay as active as much as you can. You know, there's multiple ways to do it. And there are easy ways, such as like visiting our office hours or playing programs, you know. You get points by having fun, you know. So that's kind of the good thing about it in a way. And yeah, we will keep this update daily, and we hope to see you guys participate more. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Griffin. Yeah, LTS submitted an advocacy grant application last week. So they got points for doing that, and will hopefully be having their grant application approved at our next executive board meeting. So if you guys are looking for support from RSA financially for programs and advocacy initiatives in your halls, those resources are always available to you. All right, Baby Blue. Last week, South Central passed Baby Blue off to Russell Residence Hall, and it is now Russell's turn to pass Baby Blue off to another cab. So would a member of Russell's cab unmute and share with us who they're sending Baby Blue off to this week?
We will be sending Baby Blue off to Harrington this week.
Awesome. We will send Baby Blue off to Harrington for you. If you want to just drop off Baby Blue in the RSA office, we will take that into account. Thank you so much. All right, that said, thank you all very much. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. We will see you next week at our General Assembly meeting, and hopefully at bingo night. Stay tuned on our Instagram page for all information you need to engage with us at all of our upcoming events. Thank you all and have a great weekend, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll hang on. I'm going to hang on